Go ahead.
Great. So hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar session today. My name is Petref Saraci, and I will be presenting here today Qt Design Studio together with my colleague Thomas Hartmann. So
Hello.
Thomas is a senior software engineer, and he's been working together with me and the rest of the team on delivering this product, which we are so excited about. Great. So without any further ado, I'm gonna introduce and present you the agenda for today. So we're gonna start and discover and understand a little bit the rationale and why are we doing what we're doing actually, and what we believe that are some of the key challenges that we want to solve in today's developer designer workflow. After that, we will take you and introduce Qt Design Studio as such, share a little bit about our plans, the current features, and the roadmap. And of course, this is a design studio, so we have prepared some interesting demo, and Thomas will help me to deliver this demo. I think that's pretty exciting. And of course, after the demo, we will also have a Q&A session where we're gonna try to answer all your questions. So feel free to go to the Q&A box right there and just write to us your question, and we will try to get to that as soon as we can. Great. So, all right. So let's get started. So, what is the rationale and what are we trying to solve here? So Qt as such is absolutely a great developer tool and framework. It provides you absolutely great APIs and great developer tools. But we understand that in a complex environment, designing and developing complex user interfaces requires collaboration of different teams, of different user roles. And we understand that UI design is a very crucial and essential part of today's product development, right, in software. So we're looking at the market, and we looked at what are some of the typical workflows that some of our customers are using today and adopting, and what are some of those typical challenges and pitfalls of those problems, right, of those workflows. So we look at that and we see that UI design and UI development is somewhat a little bit distant and basically maybe in a different world, so to say, because they are based on different constraints, right? So the designers have their own common tools, their own common graphical tools to create their artwork. So typically designers work with Photoshop and Sketch and other type of different tools, and they create wireframes, mock-ups, right? And the designers are the ones that are basically driving the whole UI and the UX for that product. So they are creating those sketches, they are creating this vision, right, with this common tools, and they are passing those to the developer team, which is right on the other side, basically, and somewhat in a different environment and different constraints, right? Developers are very familiar with C++, software frameworks, hardware, and they are really more interested in making sure that software is running properly on the embedded target or any target for that matter. So their job and their basically environment is somewhat different. So once basically the designer is passing their design work, right, in some format, PNG, assets, or SVGs, or even sometimes we have seen basically PDFs and documents and even Excel files passed on to the developer with specifications and details of the design that the designer was intended to do, right? So that's what we call typically the UI specs or HMI specs, depending on which industry you are. Now, we understand here developers have the problem and struggle to understand those specifications. They really need to look into the vision that the designer had intended to. And this may take some time, right? We understand that developers may go through several rounds and cycles of implementation in order to achieve that design. And in the end, the design may not be the same, may not be what exactly the designer was intending to. So we understand this is a problem. We understand this is a challenge, right? This kind of communication of what designers believe, what should the design be, and what developers are actually implementing in the end. So we understand that this is a very classical problem. The designers do not have the right tools to make basically their design testable, validatable, right? So the designers are not able to see the final artwork onto an embedded target, for example, or onto a maybe onto a mobile or tablet or desktop target, right? They have no means to take that Photoshop file, that Photoshop asset, and run it on some platform to see if that UI is matching the screen. So we understand this is a huge problem. Prototyping is absolutely important for the designers in order to express dynamically their vision of the UI. But at the same time, we understand that it becomes very hard to keep basically consistent of the whole styling if you are delivering the assets in a very basic format like PNGs or PSDs and whatnot. And it's very hard to make sure that the styling and the guidelines are actually maintained properly as the implementation goes on. So styling and brand consistency becomes very hard. At the same time, these components, these assets become very difficult and not so much reusable, so to say, in other different projects, right? So imagine you want to create a set of UI elements that are shared among different product families. How would you achieve that? And how would you create reusable components directly from the graphical assets? So at the same time, there's a lot of time spent around understanding these specifications, right? Understanding the vision. So there's a lot of iteration between developers and designers that is going on in order to understand the exact details of those components. At the end of the day, the UI these days is not a static UI. You need to make it dynamic, you need animations, you need to basically integrate and simulate some data flowing and screen navigation. So implementing those, it's very hard and time-consuming job. So the designer may also use other third-party graphic tools in order to create those animations, but those animations have to be validated on the reference hardware, on the platform, in order to be able to actually, let's say, understand the problems as early as possible. So by being able to validate your user interface as early as possible, that saves a lot of time and a lot of round tripping. Now, last but not least is that, well, let's say all this process, right, which is kind of time-consuming process, this communication between designers and developers without any proper tooling. What about change requests? So what if at some point of time you understand that later on in the process, in the development process, you understand that, okay, the hardware is not really matching the vision of the designer. So the hardware is not performing very well. So you need to properly rethink about the design. How does this change gets communicated again? And how do we again go through this loop of implementation and prototyping and validating the design? So you can understand there's a lot of time wasted in that. So this is absolutely a crucial challenge in order for designers and developers to work together and deliver world-class user experience. So I think this is absolutely one of the challenges that we want to tackle with Qt, but also with Qt design tools, and specifically now the Qt Design Studio. So just a few words about Qt Design Studio. So Qt Design Studio is a design UI environment. In fact, it's not only about design, but it's about development. So with Design Studio, you take your design further. You take your design and you're able to actually develop a UI that runs directly into the embedded target or mobile target or whatever platform, actually all the platforms that Qt supports today. So with the Design Studio, we are aiming to bridge the developers and designers and get them closer together in order to streamline the process of designing and developing user interface, but the entire product as such. So the Design Studio is absolutely a great tool for designers to basically get their assets and their artwork, their graphics into the design world, into the Qt world. And by doing that with our tools, they would absolutely feel empowered to actually take their design, validate it, make the prototypes themselves, right? Being in charge, so to say, of the whole design process. And in the end of the day, the designers will hand out to the developers a running UI code. As Thomas will, of course, show how easy that is to implement. So here, what is important is that the Design Studio, together with Qt, and particularly with the QML language, which is our language for designing and declaring user interfaces, designers are able to communicate their vision to the development team. And that makes it easy. The developers now, the development team, right, now have a running code, have QML code which they can inspect. They have QML code which they can use to integrate the rest of the software stack. They can use this QML code in order to hook up their business logic, their APIs, and they can do this without actually disrupting the design. And in fact, the ideal world is that where the design and the rest of the software stack can be implemented, can be done simultaneously without interrupting each other, without interfering each other, or rather without disrupting each other. And if actually, better yet, they can do this right at the same time by collaborating a lot easier with each other, by using the same tools, the same language, the same framework in the end. So with the Design Studio, we are providing designers a tool for them to prototype right away from their graphical artwork. They can prototype and iterate on the fly, and they can validate their work directly with the target platform and target device. In this way, designers are able to also create reusable components, right? Reusable components, assets that can be used either for different products or can be used for different projects, or better yet, they can be used with the same product evolution, so to say. So time and effort is absolutely minimized here because the designers have the capability to convert their artwork into a runnable, executable, deployable code. That is absolutely fantastic. Thomas will show you how that looks like. In this way, right, we talked about assets, we talked about reusability. In this way, they also have the means now and the tools to actually create pixel perfect animations, and they can do that right into our tools. And these pixel perfect animations are actually code again. I think this is very important to emphasize that in the end of the day, this is QML runnable executable code. So by giving this powerful tools to the designers, they are certainly now in charge of the whole vision of the design, of the whole user experience, like it should be. And in this way, they can reassure the styling, the branding consistency, the overall user experience, basically. So that is what we want to solve with Qt Design Studio. Workflow and enable the designer to drive the whole UI and UX design, basically. Right, so let's look at a little bit at the features that we have implemented in order to achieve this. Now, of course, this is a task that it's a very big task. It's a challenging task, and it's a process. It's a learning process also for us. So These are some of the features that we are planning for this year, and hopefully for 2019, based on your feedback, we will create a lot more detailed roadmap. Just to quickly go through these features and iterate them right now. So we have implemented a Qt Photoshop bridge. Qt Photoshop bridge enables Photoshop designers to export the Photoshop artwork directly into reusable, basically code in Design Studio. We will see how powerful that is. With Photoshop bridge, the designer is able already to componentize and create reusable assets directly through that. We've implemented the QML Live Preview. Now, QML Live Preview is a very simple, basic runtime. It's a native runtime, and that makes it possible for the designers, well, practically for anyone using the Design Studio, to run that UI, to run that design right into the target platform or hardware, embedded, mobile, desktop, etc. Now, there's also the live functionality in there, which means that you can see your changes instantaneously as you actually do them. Very, very cool feature, probably one of my favorite ones. Thomas will show that. So now we have also gone to the animation and timeline editor. So this is a very powerful editor that allows designers to create animations. Now, I think we have followed the same concepts as other tools does, so the designer feels very comfortable here. In QML, we have introduced shaders and visual support, but now we have made that possible into the tool. So you can drag and drop a visual effect item on any UI element and apply some different effects on that. And you can even animate that. Very cool. Shape support. So we understand the UIs are complex these days, and you want to create custom different shapes. Not all of them need to be images and rasterized, but some of them need to be QML based shape with properties that you can use and animate or control and bind to some other stuff. Last but not least is the state editor together with the connection and binding editor. Now, connection and binding editor, these are QML functionalities that we are exposing into the tool in order to make it easy for the designers to prototype. To prototype meaning like manage different behavior, right? So with connection and binding editor, you're able to capture different signals and map and match them with different properties or different values of those properties of the UI element. And the same goes with the state editor. Now, Thomas will briefly talk about that, but the state editor, think of it as UI screen states, right? So a state represents a UI state with different property values, and you can manage those easily with the tool. And the project templates and wizards. So we want to make it easy for anyone to take Qt Design Studio and get started right up front with templates and project templates and easy to use, well, easy to follow wizards. So basically anyone should be able to get started from the beginning right away. So that is for 2018, for the whole year. This is our roadmap. Today we have released Qt Design Studio Technology Preview, and most of those features, if not all, are already present there, right? So I invite everybody to, after this session, to go and download and try out Design Studio. Pretty exciting stuff. For 2018, as I mentioned earlier, we want to kind of listen to you. We want to listen to our customers. We want to listen to our users. And based on that feedback, we want to shape our roadmap. Certainly, we do have a vision, as I mentioned earlier, and we do have our own, let's say, things that we believe should be there. And just to mention a few of those. So we do have another tool called Qt 3D Studio, which is basically targeting the 3D UI development. Very, very powerful tool there. And we want to integrate a lot better with that. So we want to provide seamless environment where 2D and 3D UI is being created rather easy. We want to create more Qt bridges. As I mentioned, we have Qt Photoshop bridge. Now we want to create and expand towards more visual graphical tools, right? So Sketch is definitely on the line there. I think um, we should have that sometime in 2019, early 2019, but certainly we're looking into other tools. So Figma is one of those that I am currently exploring with a partner of us. We want to expand the functionality and capabilities of the state editor and actually state management into the designs tool, and combine that with data modeling and UI navigation flow. So we understand screens sometimes are very dynamic, and UI screens typically are driven by data or actions. So we want to provide the means for the designer to manage those with ease. Git support, this is a very tiny little feature, but I think it's very important. So we want to make it easy for designers to use Git. So we want to provide a very simple, intuitive workflow for them in order to pull, push, and merge, right, their project, their design, their artwork, somewhere in a common repository. And this could be a way for designers to work together with each other, but it could be a way for designers and developers to share their assets, right? Now, last is the advanced annotations and guidelines. So annotations, as basically it's very self-explanatory, means like we want to be able to let the users of the tool to annotate different parts of the design, leave comments, notes, specifications, guidelines, and then just manage those with ease into the tool, and provides maybe even ways to export that. And we also, I talked about Qt as a developer tool early, right? But now we are going into the design world. So we definitely want Qt to be as big, as popular as it is in the developer world, also in design world. So we are looking forward to work with third-party companies and services in order to create and boost a design ecosystem for Qt and a design community for Qt. So that is the roadmap, of course, and I'm pretty sure there's a lot of questions. So feel free to go to ask any question you have about the roadmap, the feature, and such. Right. So as I promised, now we go to the demo. So Thomas now will take over, and let's see what we have. Right. Yeah. Thank you, Thomas.
Hello, a short hello from my side. So I will give you now a short demo. So. And as Petref already mentioned, this is a lot about designers. So we start from Photoshop. We don't start in our tool, we start in Photoshop. And what you see here is a cluster with 3 gauges that was done in Photoshop, also with a little bit of help of Illustrator. And that did our in-house designer for us. And you see all the layers here. And what now is very interesting is here to the right, you see what we call the Qt bridge, the Qt Photoshop bridge. That's a plugin for Photoshop that allows you to export all of this, actually not directly to QML, but to an intermediate JSON-based format that then can be imported to QML. And yeah, you have some settings here. And for example, you have to define the path where we finally want to export that. And yeah, we have set that up all for now, and now we press export.
Right.
And then we get a small warning that we shouldn't interact with Photoshop for a while, and now we click OK. And while it's exporting, which takes a while because it has to render all the layers, inspect the internal DOM of Photoshop, and so on, we go into Qt Design Studio and we create a new project. And we create a very simple Qt Quick project, which is actually not QMake based. It's just pure QML. It just has its own project file format, and we call the project webinar. And we define some default size, and we could also change the style, but for now we just take the default style, and then we create finish. We wait a little bit, and now we have the form here. And now let's go back to Photoshop just for a second if it's finished. Oh, it's not finished yet. So now it's finished, I hope.
Yeah, maybe you can just say a few words. So the design studio as such is meant to work out of the box. You don't need to have anything set up in your computer. You don't need compilers. You don't need any of that traditionally a Qt developer would need, right? With Design Studio, we made it so that designers basically from Photoshop to Design Studio It should be a seamless environment and a kind of a design-oriented environment.
Yes, but as you see, the export is done now. We click OK here, and now we go back to our tool of the Qt Design Studio, and we have this resources tab where you would see all resources that are part of the project. Actually, we don't have any or at this point in time. We go to the right folder, that was desktop webinar. Now you see all the graphics that were exported from Photoshop. But what we are interested is actually the meta file that was exported. That's a JSON file, and now we will import that. Yes, and when we say open, this also takes a while. Now it's generating all the QML accordingly to the Photoshop file. While it's doing that, we just go back to Photoshop for a second. Yeah, we are in Photoshop again, and here you see all the layers that we did. And let's just select, for example, this layer here, the speed dial. That's the layer here in the middle. And now we can also select one of the layers beneath. And as you see in the Photoshop bridge, we show a couple of properties. And actually one property that I want to talk about today a little bit is the export as. As you can see, the speed dial is exported as component, while the speedometer itself is just exported as child, and we would have the alternative merged and skipped. So let's keep it for child. That means I can say in this case that the speed dial is exported as a QML component. That means it's exported to its own file and it's immediately reusable, while the speedometer current KPH art is just one element, a child.
Toggle the visibility to show.
Yes.
So you can toggle of the speed dial as well.
Yeah, also of the speed dial.
So that's a component.
Right, and we can also merge them down by setting them to merge, and of course we can also skip them. That's very useful, basically. So let's now go back, and it's actually still importing.
Still importing.
So, okay, that takes a while. Of course, we still needs to optimize it a little bit. Let's talk about a little bit more. All these text items, actually, we will see that they are also exported as text item in QML. If you don't want that, you could basically merge all of those text elements to the speed numbers by merging them down, and then instead you would get one big PNG instead of the text items. So hopefully now it finished. Yes, now it finally finished. So let's see, we have now all the images here, but that's actually not so much what we are interested in. We also have the QML types here, and everything that was marked as a component is now available here in the MyQML components. For example,
can you drag something?
Yeah, we can drag it in. Right, we can also delete it again. Right, so we have the fuel dial.
Can you drag the fuel dial?
Yes.
So a reusable component.
Right, which has no logic yet. That is
just a QML reusable component.
And let's go here. We have the project structure, and actually we have the cluster UI. Let's click on that. And what we get here now is an empty picture because there's still one small little bug in the export plugin. We have to reorder the background layer. That will be fixed soon.
It is already.
And yeah, the structure of the Photoshop is very complicated, so there are lots of these corner cases that we have to take care of, but we do our best, of course, and we really hope for the final version that you don't have to make these adjustments. But as you see, now we have a VisiVig representation of what we had before in Photoshop. Let's go back to Photoshop just to show it. We have zoomed out 50% in both cases, and it's very close. So what you also see is that all of the gauges are actually components. So what we do now is we press F2 or we open the context menu and say go into component. And now it opens the component as a separate file. And here now you see basically all the little items, the little small things that are special about that we exported from Photoshop, right?
Which is, by the way, it is the same structure that you had in Photoshop. So the same layer structure, the same layer name is kept. What we are only appending is the layer ID, the document ID. That's all. So it's the same layer structure, same layer name.
Yes. Yeah, and we could do now whatever we want to do, but what we want to do actually in this case is we want to add the logic of the gauge. So let's start with a needle. So we drag in an item, and we use this item now to define the center, the rotation center of the needle. So we drag it to the center here. You see the snapping. And here we have the speedometer needle that we drag into the item. Oops, didn't work the first time. Yes, now it's inside the item. Nothing changed. It's just reparented, but it keeps its position. So that's totally fine. And now what we do is we rotate it. So actually, I know that already. That
you can try some random numbers.
Yeah, I have to rotate it by minus 207 degrees. That's something I tested earlier before to get it basically at the 0 state. Yeah. This is, of course, something you have to test out. And now I did that. It's its original position, right? Now we want to add what we call a timeline to it to get it moving. I do that, and I define the range as 1 to 0 to 200. What's kind of interesting is I don't add an animation because that's technically not an animation what we do. It's a parameterization. So we create a mapping from some value range to
abstract basically values,
you
right?
Could see from it also 0 to continuum of states, right? Yes. That's one way to see it. And okay, I did that, and I defined the rotation at minus 207, and now I have this frame handle. I drag it to the end, to the very end. Nothing changed because we didn't do anything yet. Now I have this nice record button that I press here, and now I change it to 95. Okay, perfect. Now I untoggle the record button again, just to be safe. I don't make any unwanted changes. And if I drag the handle now, I basically get the behavior I want. Okay, that was easy. So let's do something slightly more complicated. Another thing that we added to the Design Studio is studio components. We click here and we get them in our item library. And what we want now is an arc, because this arc that you see here, the navigator, right? That arc is just a PNG for now, but we want to animate it. So what we do, we drag in an arc item from our item library, and now we have to fit it the original arc. That can take a while. Luckily, I know the numbers again, so let's do that first. You have to give it a certain width and height, of course. You have to give it a stroke width, which is basically this thickness. And of course, we also have to say basically where it begins and ends.
Mm-hmm. So Thomas, just one comment. So here, Thomas is trying to make a dynamic UI, right? So that's why we're using here the QML shapes. So that arc item is in fact a QML item, and Thomas will replace that blue PNG in the middle with that arc in order to drive the UI dynamically.
Exactly, and now I have the correct shape. Now I want to get the color from Photoshop. And we get the color from Photoshop, Control-C. We paste it here to the color, Control-V. Now we also give it the correct color, right? And now we select again the original and disable it because we don't, actually first, before we do that, we have to move them on top, of course.
You can zoom in the scene just to show that you have the capability. You can zoom in a little bit the scene.
Yes, we can also zoom in, but
zoom in
out
to make it
zoom in.
To make it really pixel perfect.
Right. And now let's zoom out again so we get an overview of what we do here. But now they are basically overlaying quite nicely. And now we hide the arc again. Okay. Yes. So now we have just the arc, which is basically full. Of course, now we have to, like we did before, we have to add the parameterization. So let's move to the end again. We select the arc.
So we need to make the arc follow the needle. That's the story, yes. Right?
Also, we have to move the arc a little bit higher in the hierarchy so the needle is actually on top. So let's do that. And now we have the arc again, and we drag the frame to the end. And now what we do is we add the keyframe in the end. We basically want to keep the current value, but we want to add a keyframe for that. We do that. Nothing changes. We have a keyframe now here, but nothing changed. So, but now the trick is we drag it to the beginning, and now we basically say the end is exactly the same thing as the beginning, but before we do that, we turn on the record button. So we say minus 61, and now it's gone. right? And now if we drag this nice thing here, you see we basically have our gauge. Of course, it's not complete yet. We would have to take care of the numbers and so on and so on.
And it might even be bad design. We're not designers here, right? So, but yeah, I think it's really great.
Yes,
so.
but of course, there would have to be a little bit more fine-tuning, like adding more keyframes at specific position to make really sure it's exactly on the design for all the values and so on. But I think you get the idea. And now what was really a nice trick is we have to expose this timeline to the outside where we use this component. We have this timeline element here, and we have the current frame property, and we can say export property as alias. We click that. Now it's basically property of the root item that will be exported to the element that uses that component, and we go there and we give it a better name, in just this case just value, and that's kind of it. Now we save this file and we use this nice crumble bar to get back to the original document. So we get back, and as you see we have our gauge here, and it has a value property, and we can set that to 100 and we get what we want, right?
So Thomas created a component. He managed to make the component dynamic, and he also created a new property. As you can see here, speed dial component has a new property called value, which represents the speed value. All of this was done in Design Studio, from Photoshop to actual dynamic reusable QML code. So great, Thomas. Can we have some animation? Can we quickly have some in the next 2 minutes, because we're running out of time.
So now this thing, we want to animate that.
Absolutely.
And in this case, we want to really animate it. So we want to have it fading in. So again, we basically add this thing, what we did before. But in this case, we also say create animation. We say continuous and ping pong, just for testing purposes for now. That means it's going constantly, it's going back and forth. So, and then close it again. And it has some duration of 1 second, which is totally fine. And of course, nothing happened because we did not do anything yet. But now we go to the start. We are at the start. We press the record button. Actually, we press it. And then we say, okay, we want an opacity of 0 in the beginning. So it's gone. And we want a scale, let's say, of 0.1 in the beginning. So it's now very small and basically invisible. And then we drag it to the end. And we say, okay, now we want scale 100 again. And also opacity 100. So it's back. And now we can drag the handle to see the effect we created. And now I will also expand that so we see the actual keyframes there. But because before I play around with that, I show you the live preview. Because I press that now.
This is my favorite feature.
So now we have the live preview. It's a little bit big on this laptop, so I move it here. Oops.
So we have a cluster running natively with some basic animation.
Yes.
Now, Thomas, can you drag something on the scene?
Do you see the flickering? Flickering is because the keyframes are not totally at the end, or at the beginning in this case. That's basically something you immediately now found out and could fix. Right, they were a little bit off. I fixed that.
And you did that while you were running.
Yes, and the live preview is running, and now you see how the animation is super smooth. And now we move one of the keyframes, in this case, the scaling keyframes, a bit earlier. So now you see how the whole look and feel of this animation changed.
How about the easing curve?
Yes.
How do you interpolate?
The easing curves. By default, everything is interpolated linearly, but we can change that. We have this nice editor here. We don't see it because it's behind that. So let's move it here. So that's a linear curve by default. We can change this, but we can also choose one of the many defaults we have. So let's just choose this one for now and say apply. Now what you see is that the icon is a little bit changed. That's an indicator that the interpolation is not linear anymore. And you immediately see how in the live preview it again looks significantly different.
Yes.
And this is basically now where a designer would spend a lot of time fine-tuning that. And one of the really great things is he can do that on something that's at least very close to the final target hardware.
Absolutely.
Like your iMac 6 board with Ubuntu Qt, or some Android device, whatever.
Or a second screen for that matter, right? So
yes. If performance is not so much an issue, you could just use a second screen, but doing it on the original hardware, like an iMac6 device, is of course really nice if you care about performance, because then you can basically test the performance on the device immediately.
Exactly. I think this is very powerful. So Thomas, may I take over?
Yes.
I think this was fascinating. Thank you, Thomas. So there's just one last thing which Thomas always leaves it to me to show, and I like that, is this text mode that we have introduced right into the design tool, right? So you can also go right into this setting, you can go and see the whole code, right? Or if you don't want to see the code, you can see that in what we call side by side. So you can navigate in the form editor, and that will also navigate automatically to the code. So I can do that. Basically, I can select the code and it will take me exactly to the form, or the other way around. Now, this is important. It's important because developers understand this. Developers may want to see how the QML code looks like, how is it generated, in order to maybe perform some optimizations, or just merely to understand how the layouts are done in QML. So very, very important. One thing that it's also worth mentioning here is that you can also go to the full editing mode. So it's an environment where we want to allow not only designers to create powerful UIs, but also developers to actually, well, in fact, we call them UI developers, UI engineers, where they can really express programmatically, basically, their needs, their requirements, and implement those. Great, so I'm gonna go back to the slides now and kind of wrap it up there, and then go to the Q&A session. So what are some of the benefits, right? So we talked about prototyping. We talked about bridging the designers to the developer world. So with QDesign Studio, designers are able to iterate faster, are able to iterate quickly on their artwork. They can prototype, they can preview their prototype, and they can leverage all the Qt and QML APIs directly into the tool. Very, very powerful. So faster iterations, faster prototyping as such. With that, you are able to manage and actually predict, right, your outcome as a designer. You can see and validate and check your artwork as early as possible and understand what could go wrong with that. So in the end, you are improving, basically, you are managing risk. You are managing and predicting the outcome as early as possible of your work. Now, having said all of that, in the end, you are managing to lower the cost because you have faster iterations. So you're spending less time implementing specifications, but rather working with tools that directly output the desired outcome. So in such, you are able to eliminate unnecessary waste, keep the schedules, and avoid any surprises that implementation may bring while you do that, because you're able to validate early as possible with Design Studio. So with that, I wanted to basically finish and say to you that our vision for design tooling in Qt is that we believe in a strong collaboration between designers and developers that actually fosters and boosts innovation. In the end, it will deliver world-class user experiences. And we believe that that is possible via an effective and lean workflow, as well as the rapid prototyping and fast iterations. So the combination of these two, together with common tools and languages, enables this effective workflow and this effective collaboration. And therefore, in the end, you get delightful user experiences and great products. Right, so I think that was about our presentation and the demo. So I think it's not time now to go to the questions that you may have. Great, so meanwhile, please feel free to ask us any questions. So we are happy to try to answer those. Right, so there's a question here. What's the future of the Open Qt Creator? Is it its project in Qt's Jira was renamed to Design Studio. Is it going to be a separate product? Great question. Absolutely. Qt Design Studio is a separate product. Qt Creator is also a separate product. Qt Creator is a development IDE. Certainly, we are using that. Certainly, Qt Design Studio is built on top of Qt Creator, so it has a long history of solid, mature architecture. So, as such, we are definitely basing our work on top of Qt Creator. But Qt Creator has a different scope. It is geared towards developers, and it will stay like that, and we will definitely enhance that further. Meanwhile, Design Studio will have its own project in Jira as well, its own product cycle as such.
But maybe one small thing is the Qt Quick Designer, at least for now, there are no plans to remove it. And everything we do on the core of that, which is basically shared product, upstream, and it's identical.
That's absolutely true, yes. Right, so the next question. Are there any plans for Linux bridges or multi-platform? Right, so I'm not sure I understand very well the question here. So you need to understand that for us, the bridge is the bridge to the visual authoring tools. So we have the Qt Photoshop bridge. We are looking into Sketch bridge. I mentioned also something about Figma that I'm trying to explore the possibilities of that. In the future, I see more bridges coming along. Again, bridges are basically plugins for third-party tools on, third-party tools like Photoshop, Sketch, and things like that. So Qt Design Studio is a cross-platform tool, so it runs on Windows and Mac today, and very likely in the future on Linux. And of course, the outcome and the results of that, right? It's Qt and QML code, and there's nothing special about it. So if Qt runs anywhere, then everything about the outcome of Qt Design Studio will run anywhere. I mean, it's Qt and QML code. There's absolutely nothing additional on top of that. So I hope I answered your question, but please feel free to just give me a second comment if that was what was the answer you were looking for. Great. Moving forward. In the demo, the needle was reparented to the new item. What would happen after re-importing the Photoshop bridge data? Would I get another copy of the needle? So, very good question. Now, exactly, these are some of the use cases we want to tackle and solve. I mean, this is absolutely one of the most challenging tasks, right? Making the round tripping as smooth as possible. Thomas has already proposed some ideas. We are still in the research phase. We are trying to think of some sort of heuristic and smart merge, right? So it means that if you are keeping the same layer structure, the same layer names on Photoshop, and also that is maintained also on the design side, on Design Studio, very likely we will be able to do a very smart merge where we only fetch the changes. However, I think it's too early to talk about solutions. I can also just guarantee you that this is one of the most high priority items today in our list for the next few to 6 months, end of the year. Let's see how we progress. So more updates will come into that, but the short story is that we are looking to make some sort of merge mechanism on that.
Yeah, maybe I can take a little bit. I mean, just not the clear idea here is, of course, that, for example, we could imagine something like a three-way merge, where basically when we merge the second version from Photoshop, we know that this item was reparented.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, we can fix it. But this is not implemented now.
Yeah. So this is something we need to research, but very good question. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. What happens when re-importing a modified Photoshop project? So exactly. So this is absolutely a high priority item for us. As Thomas already mentioned, we don't want to talk about too early about our ideas, because I think it's still let's say under research. And we want to kind of come out with that, with a good solution, with a good proposal. So at the moment, we are only thinking about merging, some sort of smart merge. Thomas, okay, maybe just to give a little bit of a hint here, we also have this metadata, right, that we export to. So well, Photoshop exports into metadata JSON. From JSON, we do importing into QML. So we do have room in that metadata and also in the importing side to do heuristic in order to keep track of the IDs, layer IDs, QML IDs, layer structure on both sides, and trying to do some merging there. So that's all we can give today as hints, unfortunately. But certainly a high priority for the final 1.0 version. Great, great questions. Thank you, guys. What is the license model? Will it also be available in application UI, software license, or embedded? Thank you. Very good question. For now, the technology preview is available for everyone. So the model we are looking to create basically is you're able to use Qt Design Studio for your project, or embedded, or application UI for mobile or desktop whatsoever. There's no limitation in that. Certainly, we have the open source route, which means that the outcome of the Design Studio is actually GPL based. But if you want to design and develop commercial-based applications for embedded as such, then you need to have the corresponding Qt commercial license. So in that case, for embedded, you would need to have Qt for device creation. And the same goes for Qt for application development if you want to create closed source commercial applications. If you want to do open source, you're free to do that as well. The Qt Design Studio does not have any extra fees or any extra premium as such. So it's available for you to use. And depending on your final product, you would need the corresponding Qt license. Great. I like this. This is a fantastic question. So moving on. What is the footprint of the application size? Very good. So Thomas maybe may cover this very quickly, but so the output of Design Studio is QML, as nothing more than just QML. And then in the end of the day, these QML code has to be built, integrated with some C++ or some image in an embedded device. And then that will probably, let's say, define the size. I don't think at this point, the Design Studio has any implications of size. Of course, we have the assets, the PNGs. They will definitely increase the size of your app. But QML as such is very small. It's just QML text. So it really depends on the final software and how you integrate that.
Yeah, so it's basically a question of what is the footprint of Qt. And we have the Qt-like project. So we try to make the footprint as small as possible. We also have lots of research going on there. So there's really like a lot of work done to make the footprint for Qt Quick-based and Qt-based applications really small. But it's still a C++ framework, so it will not be kilobytes.
Right. How to import data from Qt Design Studio to Qt Creator? Hey, very good. This is something we want to also streamline in the future, but for now, basically, you just simply copy the QML files into your project, which could be a QMake project, it could be a CMake project. In the future, this will be done perhaps automatically with some sort of wizard, or it could be also just pushing it on the same Git repository, right, using some sort of similar Git project file. So for now, you just simply copy the files over to your QMake-based or CMake-based project, whatever Qt Creator project you're using. It's just a matter of copying the files over.
Well, in the end, when we have the Git integration, basically both the developer and the designer can work on the same project or on the same repository, but not necessarily on the same project, because on one side you have the QMake file, and on one side you just have the QML files. But it would then be the developer's job basically to update the build system. But we don't target any specific build system at the moment.
Great. So moving on. So I have noticed some design time metadata in the bottom of the QML file. Example, current time, yes. Putting such pre-user stuff in files that go to, I guess, to the software framework or software middleware, I suppose, may generate constant conflict between developers. Maybe it could be put some QML project user file that does not go into the, I'm not sure what the CM
soft control system.
Is it soft control system?
Let me
All
give
right.
an answer. Actually, this is more or less an experiment we just do. So it's not, it's still a tech preview, but there are conflicting requirements because for the designers, we have the requirement that those things are persistent. That
Right.
means they are basically part of the file, because it's not just the current timeline position, it's also annotations.
Right.
Layers might be locked, disabled. So it's really a conflict there.
Right.
So basically the requirement from the design side is pretty clearly basically part of what goes to the project, part what is shared between the designers. And this is why we now put it into the common section of one file. We could of course move it into separate files, but the Qt Creator user file would not be the correct place.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you, Thomas. It seems like I have missed. So, will source including bridge be available to commercial customers? No, that is not the plan we are thinking at the moment. So you are able to use the tool, but the source code will be closed. So that's the plan we have. Great. I'm not sure I'm reading it properly.
The style sheets for widgets.
The style sheets for widgets, if I'm right. It's cutting, wait a second, because the dialog is actually cutting the questions. Ah, wait, I can make this bigger. Right, good. For non-QML UIs also, is it possible integration with Photoshop? Unfortunately, we don't have any plans for that. The design studio is, I have to say, heavily based towards QML and Qt Quick. So for now, there's no other plans, basically. Great. Will Qt Design Studio be available for developers using Qt open source developer license, or will it be a commercial license only project? No, like I mentioned earlier, you are anyone can download, use Qt Design Studio, and then depending on the project you're doing. So if you're doing an open source project, the outcome of Qt Design Studio is GPL based, so you can absolutely do that for your project. If you're developing a commercial project, then certainly you can combine that with Qt commercial license, and then you are able to create a commercial closed source application with Design Studio and Qt. So,
but we absolutely want to make this available to the open source community
right.
at this time.
Right, exactly.
Just to sum it up.
So how to get on to some testing? How to get hands-on and do some testing. I saw the technology preview, but I don't see it in the download area in the installer. Or right, I appreciate it. So there's a new page. There's also a new blog post. So please go to blog.qt.io. There's a nice blog post there explaining how to get the package, where to get it, and all of that. Like I mentioned, is not available in the online installers. It's a separate product for now. So you need to fill in the form, and then that should be available for you automatically. There's no extra need for that. Right. Yeah. Thank you for source code management. Right. I usually.
No, this was just it.
Yeah. I understand now the CSMM. Yeah. I'm just used to the other one, to the code versioning control.
CVS.
Yes, but just the terminology thing. Right. So will there be, I guess, a
YouTube video.
A YouTube video. I'm not sure understanding this word here,
no,
but
just repeat.
I guess will it be yes. So the webinar as such will be made available to all registrants. So if you have registered to this webinar with a proper email account, you'll certainly get the video. There will be other videos whatsoever. Actually, I really invite you to go to my blog post. And so if you just go to the website blog.qt.io, you will see there the blog post explaining again the value proposition of Design Studio and also providing you the links where to get this. So,
and also 2.5 hours of videos that contain tutorials and explain the tool.
Right. Thank you. Will the tool offer a real basic, so what you see, what you get as composition of standard and custom components, also C++? A very good question. So, well, that's also, it's a matter of interpretation, but you have to think of it like this. So when it comes to C++ components, this is something that we believe developers are better at. So if you're designing something from ground up from a C++ APIs, you are more than welcome to do that. You can create a proper Qt Quick plugin with that, and then you can make sure that those plugins is actually available in Design Studio. We will provide the mechanism and even the documentation in the future on how to achieve that. It will be very straightforward. But the Design Studio will not allow you to create components from C++. That's something developers do on their own developer tools. Now, when it comes to other type of custom components, in fact, that's what we are allowing with Design Studio, to create your own custom component from Photoshop directly. So like we did with the whole cluster, right? We have now a speedometer reusable custom component. That component can be reused. Yes, it's developed in QML, but can be reused in other projects as such. So in a way, we are allowing the designers to create custom components either with Photoshop or using the Design Studio directly. I hope I've answered your question, but please leave us a comment if that was not enough. Great. Do you need Photoshop license while importing the Photoshop files in Qt Design Studio? Well, unfortunately, you may need a Photoshop license in order to continue to use the Photoshop plugin, but this is not our restriction. Unfortunately, this is something that Adobe takes care. To my understanding, I think it may even work with the evaluation license, but this is something you need to test on yourself. So yes.
But the JSON metadata import, of course, does not need a Photoshop license.
Right.
So once you export it is using the Photoshop bridge, what comes out of that, you can import without a Photoshop license.
Right. That's absolutely correct. Yes. So I think it's Alessandro giving us a link there.
That's a link to the
yes.
video series.
But if you go to the blog.qt.io, basically you will able to get all the information you need when it comes to how to get the Design Studio, where do I see the Design Studio, how to use it, the links to the tutorials and such. So blog.qt.io. Alessandro, you should put this on the chat, because we cannot copy paste the question and put them into the chat. All right, so you are doing that on the chat. All right, thank you. I'm just looking through. Right, so there's a lot of questions also in the chat, and another one coming in. So what about sharing your own created component with other people? Is it going to be some database with community created components in the future? Certainly, this is part of the vision. So I certainly believe that's the road, that's the path moving forward. So somewhere in 2019, our goal is to create that community where designers, UI developers and UI designers can create such components in QML and actually share them, being able to share them in some community repository, or basically maybe even share them within just a closed sort of repository. Certainly part of the vision. Not for 2018, very likely for some time in 2019. Very good question. Right, so I'm gonna just quickly scan through the chat. window to see if there actually are any questions there. So, oh, there's a lot of comments in the chat window. Let's see if we can actually find a question there. Right. So, right. Photoshop support exports as okay as SVG. Does the Photoshop bridge supports SVG images or only PNG? That's a very great question. So Photoshop bridge will not export SVGs. However, you may use SVGs in Qt and Qt Design Studio. There's no problem with that. So if you have an SVG image, right, you can easily import that and use that. Please note that we don't provide an SVG editor. We do have maybe perhaps some basic capabilities of SVG path, but we don't provide an SVG editor. So you can just simply use SVG assets into your UI. There's no problem with that. Just like PNGs, you use SVGs. Just the Photoshop bridge does not export SVGs for now.
Yeah, maybe one more comment. Qt Quick now has the SVG path, and there's also part of the Qt Designer now. The Qt Design Studio is now something called the SVG path item that can basically directly render an SVG path. And we might consider, but that's research, that basically when exporting the Photoshop file, that you can basically mark certain layers as vector data, and then they will be stored as vector data, and there won't be PNGs rendered. So that's research.
Yes, actually, I see here a lot of basically the questions were already in Q&A, so people were just basically rewriting the same questions. So there was nothing new. I already checked. So, but there is something new here. No, I think we're done with the question. So that was pretty good. Yeah, I just haven't marked this done. So. Okay. All right, there's one last question came in last second. Will these new QML components like timeline be open source? We are definitely considering that. At the moment, we are keeping everything closed source. Certainly this is highly considerable. So we are still looking into how do we approach this for the final version 1.0. Great. I think this was fantastic. Lots of questions, lots of interest. I am very happy and excited to see this. So I think we are kind of running out of time, which not sure if there's any more questions. Yeah, I don't see any more questions here. So I think I'm going to call it a session. And again, I wanted to thank you everybody for taking the time. Please go visit blog.qt.io to see the latest blog and learn about the Design Studio, how to download it, where to download it, and how to use and how to find the tutorial videos.
Yeah, also thanks a lot from my side.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.